Am I good to go? I think I am. Hello, beautiful souls. Thank you for being here with me. Just check that's good. Okay. Welcome to Self-Love Talks with me, Tara Love Perry. And tonight I'm going to be talking about empowering your super psychic senses. I'm going to be talking about I think, 4 key areas that's really important for the empowerment of your psychic senses. And I'm going to tell you a story about how I came to discovering mine and how I started using them. And in that story, because I think that the most wonderful thing, the most wonderful way of validating your experience, and you may be having an experience that you're not aware of, or that you haven't realized that it's an actual thing because it hasn't been validated. And so I feel like when I share a story, there's going to be certain points, probably multiple points along that story, where you will recognize yourself, and then you get validated. And validation is one of the absolutely crucial parts, I think, at least it has been in my life, of helping you actualize yourself, your fully authentic self, actualizing your potential, bringing your true gifts into light, is first being able to validate them, that they're there, that they're real, recognizing them, realizing that it's a thing, that it's part of you, and it's part of your package of your gifts, your abilities, and how to then bring that online, how to use that in the world. So before I jump into that, I just want to say thank you for being here once again. You guys that have been following me and being my loyal fans, subscribers, ones that like and comment, I love you. Thank you so much for being part of my channel and being part of my team. And those of you that are new, welcome. I'm really delighted to invite you here, and I hope you're going to grab loads of really beneficial, validating information for yourself right here. There's a couple of things that I want to promote before I get started. And one of them is that I'm going to be running a very exclusive, just probably a one-off presentation on Friday. Right, I'm trying to cut down all my tech use and cut down all the marketing and all the social media and all that kind of stuff. It's just not good for my system. So I'm just going to do a Zoom presentation, like a private meeting for a bunch of people that are interested in developing their psychic abilities. And there's a whole lot more information on that that I'm going to be sharing in this video as well. So if you want to know more about that, just leave me a comment. I'm going to send you the private link so that you can join me on that meeting, okay? That's on Friday. And that's the 29th of March. That's in a couple of days. And then the other thing is, I'm actually offering half-price discount readings right now for your soul purpose, your potential, and your power. So you can just head over onto my website, taraloveperry.com, and go check that out. And I'm doing the half-price readings this month because of this training that I'm going to be offering. And people that are interested and kind of going, okay, what's that about? This is resonating with me. Maybe you want to jump in and have a reading with me, get a feel for what that is, what that looks like. And then also I can tell you what your most powerful senses are, and personally how to help you activate them, and kind of help you, give you direction on what your purpose and how I see you using those in the world, you know, why you were born with those gifts in the first place, what your path of destiny is. This is something I absolutely love doing with people, because you know, when somebody is on purpose, when someone's validated for who they are, when someone's seen, they just light up, right? I'm sure you know that feeling. When somebody gets you, when somebody sees you, it's like a part of you just starts glowing. And what's happening there is you are getting activated. You're being realized. You're being validated for who you are. And that lighting up, that comes from your soul. That's just not an ego thing where you're going, oh yeah, making you feel temporarily better. that has a deep and lasting impact. It means that it's like you matter more, like you're real. And you're real. You have a body, you have a mind, you think, you speak, you go about life, but it's like that special something in you gets seen for who you really are. It starts to shine out. It's like this part of you is real. That deeper part, the more mysterious part, the not so obvious part, the magical part. And when that part of you gets seen, that feels huge, right? It feels amazing. It's like you've waited your whole life for somebody to see you in that way. And then what can happen? Once this activation happens, then it's like, oh, does that just diminish again, quietly waiting for the next person to validate you? Likelihood of what happens is actually life starts to send you signs. You start to go on a journey. Things start to open up in front of you. You start to get connected with people who are similar to you or who have a similar story to you. And that's why I think if you're watching this video, it's probably because life is giving you one of those signs. Life is trying to put you into my path and you into mine and me into yours so that you can hear something in this message that I'm going to share with you today that's going to help kind of add more gravitas, add more weight, add more credibility to something you've already either experienced or that you're waiting to happen. You're waiting for someone to see. You're waiting for that activation moment. You have a secret inside of you that you feel is a bit weird, a bit quirky, a bit odd, maybe not even a bit, maybe like really weird, because that's how I felt. In fact, that's how I am. and you wanting to know if it's okay to be you and if it's useful and if it has a value, or if it's just something that you should keep hidden, keep quiet, and don't let anybody know about. Okay, most people choose that route. I guarantee, or I don't guarantee, I recommend that you tease that part of yourself forward, that you hold that part of you gently, that you nurture this part of you into being, because this could be, and I suspect is, your greater, higher potential. The reason that you're born in this lifetime, for something magnificent to be born in your life, the magnificence of you. So how did I get started on this? And if I sound a bit strange tonight, I'm not like totally feeling totally with it, if I'm honest. I actually get a little bit anxious doing these videos. I have a message, I have something to share, and I want to share it, but I don't always feel, totally confident just speaking to the camera. I'm much better live with people. So sometimes, I don't feel completely confident. So that's, if I'm sounding a bit odd, that's why. But the reason I do this is because actually I'm very passionate about facilitating and helping people to recognize their true value, to recognize their true purpose, and to acknowledge their gifts and sensitivities, and particularly your extrasensory awarenesses, because that's about awakening. And I really love this because personally it changed my life, and I've taught this in many places for many, many people for the last, almost 20 years. And when I'm teaching people and they get validated and they start lighting up, that's the best feeling ever. So I'm wanting just to pass that on to whoever's interested, to whoever's listening. So my story is, I'm not going to tell you the whole version, but essentially I grew up feeling absolutely disconnected from this world. I didn't feel like I belonged from very early on. And I think a lot of people feel like that, where you just go, this is a mad place. I don't understand why people behave the way they do. And it also felt very strongly to me, and I'm guessing you're experiencing this, is that you feel like people are lying to you. people aren't telling you the truth. Like, it's one thing people smiling at you and saying, yes, I'm fine, everything's good, yes. And they're telling you something, maybe something about the world or something about your life, something about you. And you think, okay, I've got to trust this person. I've got to believe this person because they're an authority, they're a grown-up, they're my parents, they know better, they've been in the world longer. But there's something inside of you that's just going, yeah, but that doesn't make any sense, because something in me is not buying this. Something doesn't believe it. And I want you to listen to that part of you, because even though growing up in a world where actually I would say most people are lying, there's very few people that are actually able to tell you the truth of actually how they feel, what's going on in any one moment, what's going on in their thoughts, what's going on in their heart, what's going on in them emotionally, what they're subconsciously or energetically emitting as a signal out of themselves. And if you could see those thoughts, if you could see the feelings, if you could see the things that people harbor inside of them, thinking that they're secret, whilst simultaneously showing the world another face, another part of themselves, and not being authentic, not being honest, not being real, that's very disconcerting when you pick that up. Imagine if you can actually see it. Imagine how much more real it would be if you could just say to someone, well, actually, that's not true, because look, your energy is saying this. Your emotional frequency is actually reading up here rather than down here, or vice versa. Imagine if you could see the things that people think in their heads when they're smiling at you and being nice. So I'm not meaning to like freak you out and scare you and say that everybody in this world is a liar. I think most of the time people just don't realize. People, I think, have lost touch with their authenticity. They don't know how to really tell the truth to themselves, let alone anybody else. So I don't think it's, most of the time anyway, deliberate against you, to confuse you, to upset you, or to hide anything from you. I think this is just people. Maybe you do the same thing. Maybe you're hiding that part of yourself that doesn't feel comfortable, that doesn't feel confident, that, doesn't want to do something, or, doesn't want to let somebody know how you really feel. And I'm not making that wrong. I'm just saying that this is how people interact. And it's really, really confusing, right? It's really confusing because we can't see those things physically unless you have the eyes to see energy, which I believe you actually do, but that sense is probably not in play. It's probably not being used. So you're second guessing. And that's how loads of people get gaslit. That's how loads of people get manipulated. That's how people have power over them from others, from those authorities, because that sense of self, your sense of self, your power is diminished while other people's power is accentuated, right? So it's already having a disempowering effect on you, and very confusing to the mind, very upsetting to your mental health if you actually are in that place where you've got that contradiction going on, where yes, I'm believing everything that I'm being told, but part of me doesn't buy it. That inner conflict can cause problems for yourself, for your health, for your well-being, for your mental health. So I had this growing up. I used to just feel that everyone was lying to me, and I took responsibility for that, and I thought it must be something about me. And I realized that sometimes I would say things that I thought were blatantly obvious, and that it was kind of a joke, or it was just safe to say such things, like what I was feeling from people, what I was seeing, what I was picking up. And then I learned that it wasn't okay to say that people got offended, and that people didn't like that inner stuff or the hidden stuff being exposed. It freaked them out. It freaked them out that I knew. So I learned, okay, that's not a good idea. We don't talk about that. We don't say things. But that in itself became very confusing because it's like, well, what am I allowed to say and what aren't I allowed to say? What is acceptable? What isn't acceptable? But generally grew up feeling incredibly weird and that there was something, I was seeing things. I was seeing spirits. I was seeing, it's hard to describe because when you're growing up, it's a bit like having, the growth spurts of a child. 1 minute your legs are growing, the next minute your torso grows, and then maybe your shoulders pop out, and then it's like everything kind of grows in different stages. So it's not like one continuous thing. So for me growing up, my senses were like that. It would be like, oh, I'd have a phase of getting a certain kind of psychic messages, and then another phase of seeing certain things and hearing certain things. And it was all disjointed, right? So it wasn't a clear path. But the key point is here that those extrasensory abilities weren't recognized by the people around me. They weren't validated, they were shut down. And that's where I think we have something in common, because I don't think there are many children, maybe more modern parents now, but certainly to validate the emotional content that you're picking up in the room, to validate visions or dreams or premonitions that you're having, or maybe where you're telepathically reading somebody's mind. People aren't going to validate that for you because it's too weird. Right? So it's like you don't know what's normal and what isn't normal. And then you learn what's acceptable, like everything else, like maybe not putting your elbows on the table, maybe eating your dinner with manners, or you're saying your please and thank yous, right? That's acceptable behavior. You very quickly learn what's acceptable and what isn't. So these parts of you get shut down. They get pushed to the back. They're not wanted. They're not lovable. They don't help you. So moving forward, gosh, going through university, this was in my early 20s. So I was getting intensity of these visions. And I'll tell you an example. One time I was at a party and I was with a whole bunch of people I didn't know. And I was walking through the doorway and this lady kind of met me. She was walking through the doorway, we passed each other. And instead we kind of sat and chatted for or stood and chatted for a couple of minutes. And while she was telling me something, like you see in the movies, like I wasn't hearing her at all. I didn't hear a single word she said because my senses were like going completely through her and out the other side. And it was like I could see in the space of about a minute all the major traumas that had ever happened to her in her life and in past lives. It was like I went inside, zoomed right through all these layers, and then came back out again. And I was just looking at her. And then I went into the other room. And bear in mind, I didn't do, extracurricular activities in parties. I didn't take substances. I was just there. And I walked into the room. And then all of a sudden, it's like I could see everybody's shadow stuff, like everybody's trauma was in the room, not just the people that were sitting there. And so that kind of freaked me out. And I started to see that more and more, that everywhere I went, I could see the kind of unmet, unloved shadow side of people, the part of them where the light hasn't been shone, where they haven't realized themselves, they haven't recognized, they haven't met themselves, I don't necessarily mean shadow as in evil, dark, bad, or horrible. It's just like the shadow outside in the sunshine when it's a sunny day, the shadow falls in the place where the light isn't yet shining. But when the sun moves, eventually that shadow moves and the sun shines in that spot. So everywhere gets lit up. So that's what I mean by people. It's like those kind of closeted, hidden parts, which can become very dark and heavy if it's a prolonged period, where it's been kind of kept out of the light. It can start to fester, it can start to turn. But anyway, I'm seeing this room full of everyone's shadow. I can also see their light, their beauty, their potential, that inner magic inside them, all these different kind of colors of light. And I'm seeing this room And I'm just like, this is so overwhelming. And so I kind of made decisions, subconscious decisions, that I only wanted to see the light side of people and not the dark side of people, because that felt safer at the time. I was young, I was naive. Turns out that's not the safest way to be. That was a really, misinformed thing to do. But I was trying to keep myself safe. And I know, having, matured now and seeing so many other people, I see that so many people are doing that. They're only wanting to look at the light side. They're not wanting to look at the darker side of themselves or other people or the stuff that's going on in the world, because it just looks too scary. And the reason it's scary is because it's kind of not being talked about enough. It's not being validated by more people. And also because, well, what do you do about it? If there's no solution, if there's no hope, what do? You just shove it back in the cupboard and you pretend it's not there, right? So I don't recommend that's a good idea. But I believe that as we are all evolving and this shift in consciousness is happening in the world, naturally more and more people are awakening. The vibrational frequency of the earth is changing. Our consciousness is kind of budding open. We're starting to become aware of so much more than we did before. Look at the diversity in the world these days. Even 10 years ago, it wasn't as diverse as it is now. It wasn't as socially inclusive as it is now. Okay, things are happening rapidly. And as that happens, people are talking about their emotions so much more. They're talking about their psychic abilities. They're talking about what would have been very weird, extraordinary things even 10, 20 years ago. So it's becoming more, I wouldn't even say close to normal, but it's like, oh, okay, not as freaky as before. And that's why I think it's so important to, let you kind of feel safe in that, at least feel safe in yourself, even if not to anybody else yet. That because that veil is thinning, because the consciousness is changing and lifting on this planet, and people are striving to become more authentic, that your personal extrasensory gifts and abilities are like wanting to bud. They're wanting to come out into bloom. They're wanting to manifest. Your authentic self, whether you like it or not, whether you know how to deal with it or not, is emerging. You are awakening. Everybody is awakening. And it's really, really beautiful. But it can be scary if you don't know how to deal with it, how to manage it, if you don't know how to recognize it, if you don't know what it is, if you feel alone with it. And it can be like, oh, what's that strange thing? Shove it back inside. Don't do that. So what happened with me? Years later, I had 2 babies, had the most amazing birthing experiences, which blew me wide open. I had natural home births, no drugs, no interventions. I just birthed, and it was absolutely beautiful. And that was by intention, by the way, that was by design. And I think that's what blew me wide open, because soon after my second one was born, actually, somebody who was much older than me recognized, I was like late 20s, somebody much older than me recognized that there was something unusual about me. And I, there's quite a lot of unusual things about me, but he was like, no, after a lot of conversations, he was like, okay, I want you to do something. I want you to put your hands, it sounds really dodgy, but he said, put your hands on my energy centers and read me. And I was like, what? And what he actually meant was, so our chakra centers, third eye, throat, higher heart, solar plexus, navel, sacral, base, the main chakra areas, the crown. He was like, just put your hands on my energy centers, on my chakras. So I had, facing him sideways, I had one hand on the front, one hand on the back. I'd never done that before. I'd never read anybody before. I didn't really know what I was supposed to do. But he said, I think you've got a gift and I want to see what you can do. Read me, tell me what you pick up. And so the moment I engaged my hands, and it wasn't like I was, even touching his body, I was just touching the energy centers and tuning in and feeling them. I'd never done that before. So I was feeling into the energy centers, and I could get the connection of the energy moving from one hand to the other hand through the body. Now, this is really fun to practice. You might want to go and practice that, just either on an object or a person, or like I did on the chakra centers, and see if you can get the connection where the energy is flowing through. And like, see if you can see it, see if you can get a texture, see if you can feel like it's got any messages in it, any information. Because energy is information, it's loaded with information. And so see if you can pick anything up. So that's what I did. I just started, I can't remember if I started at the top or the bottom, but I went down all of his chakras. It took me about an hour and a half. And he wasn't giving me any clues, any indications about anything. I was just like, okay, when I put my hands here, this is what I see, this is what I hear, this is what I feel. And I just told him this whole story. And actually, it was a bit like putting a jigsaw puzzle together, and it all started to connect. And I was like, so that's why that was happening there, and that's happening there. And it was like, seeing the wiring on a circuit board or something, and going, okay, I can see why all of that adds up to that now. And it gave me this massive overview picture of this person's soul story, not just what he'd done in this lifetime, but the patterns and the stories that his soul was repeating lifetime after lifetime, where he was getting stuck and what was possible for him if he was able to get unstuck. And so when I finished, he was like, I've never met anybody else that can do that like you. And this guy had been following healers, traveling all over the world, trying to get an issue sorted. And he'd been to many, many different psychics and healers, some of them very famous, psychic surgeons and stuff all over the world. So when he said to me, I've never met anyone that can do this like you, I was like, wow. And it wasn't even so much his words, it was the fact that what I said to him, he said was right. And it was like, so that means something to you? That's not just babble. That's not just a random story. That's not me imagining. That actually means something to you. And in that moment, it was like, honestly, it was just like suddenly I felt like myself for the first time. For the first time in my life at 29 or something, I was right. And that I wasn't used to that happening. It was like I was used to people telling me that I was crazy or mad or wrong. And so to hear that I was right was like, wow. And I kind of knew it, that moment. And literally, I felt like somebody had just given me my right arm, and as if I'd lived my whole life without my right arm. And now suddenly I've got it. And it was like, wow, something big clicked into place. So this person, he told me to practice. So I did. I would start practicing on friends. I started to, even charging money for it. I was raising 2 little boys. I needed to earn money. And to my great, I couldn't believe it, amazement, people paid me money to come and have me read them because I could tell them useful information, things that they couldn't see. It's a bit like when you want to see what your hair looks like at the back or what your bum looks like in those jeans, and you need a mirror at a certain angle for you to see with another mirror here so you can see your blind spot. So you can see in the parts where you can't see with your eyes just normally facing forward. And so I learned to be that mirror for people so that they could see themselves. And I've been doing that now for like 22 years, a long time. And in that journey, there's always like more growth stages. So what does that look like? If you're thinking, okay, Maybe you don't feel things when you put your hands on people. Maybe you haven't tried also. Maybe you don't see things. I believe that everybody sees things, but you just maybe haven't registered what you're seeing. Maybe you think that it's going to be something like dancing in front of you, you know, like my pen. You see this pen dancing and you go, oh, wow, that's how you see spirits, or that's how you see visions, like something as real as what this looks like. Sometimes it really is like that, and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's a flicker in the back of the mind, something like a little bit of a memory of a dream coming through. And you just go, what was that? Pause, rewind. What was I just looking at? And then you start to tune in on it and focus. But some people think that they can't see energy. But actually, when you still your mind and you allow yourself to see, then you will see. It's one of those things that if you believe you can't, you can't. And if you believe you can, you can. And what's the truth? Is it down to belief? The fact is you can see, you can hear, you can tune in on that invisible information that is written everywhere, whether it's emotional, mental, spiritual, or even physical information written in the cells, written in the DNA, written inside the body, that you can actually, you know, tune your senses to read all of that. And your senses are designed to do so. It's whether or not you unlock them, like get them out of that dark place you've stuffed them into, open the door and push them out into the sunshine a little bit and give them a chance. Start believing that you can. Because I believe the fact is you actually already can. And so what use does this have? You know, because at first, yes, it might be like those weird growth spurts where it feels really uncomfortable and you're like, whoa, you know, suddenly maybe you're seeing auras, or maybe suddenly you're hearing, you know, dead people or something. And then you're like, I don't know what to do with that. That sounds really scary. Well, that's where your journey to mastery starts. That's where your journey to kind of going, okay, I've let something out. Now you have a choice. Are you going to stuff it back in just because you don't yet understand it, because you haven't given it a chance, because it still feels like a weird curse rather than a gift? Or are you going to keep encouraging yourself, keep nurturing yourself, allowing those gifts to come out so that they can develop into something really powerful and you can become a master of it? You become a master of yourself. But you can't master yourself unless you've had that playtime first, until you've had that period of safe self-discovery, self-realization, validation from other people that you're good, that it works, that it's right, that it's real, that you're fine, that you're safe, that you're not crazy, you know, and you get to experiment, you get to, you know, not be kind of reckless and muck around with it, but to explore, to play, to have fun with it. Because this is how we grow as children. The only reason you can do what you can do now is because, you know, maybe you played being a cook in the kitchen with your mum and now you're a fantastic cook. Maybe you helped dad fixing things around the house with your, you know, pretend spanners and pretend hammers. And now, you know, you're a carpenter or you're a builder or you're a mechanic or you fix things. You know, it's like that's how we develop, is first of all through play. First of all, just through experimenting, not having an end goal, just discovering. And so that part is really important part of your development. And to be able to do that in a really safe, held, loved way so that you're not shamed, you're not embarrassed, you're not hiding, you're not feeling like there's something wrong with you, where you are actually free to just to come out and explore yourself and explore your sensitivities and explore your gifts. And I find that the best way to do that is with other people who are doing the same thing. right? With somebody who knows what they're doing, which is me. And I absolutely love, it's really like just holding an open space with direction, with guidance, with some here, try this, and doing some processes to unlock, to clean up, to release your extrasensory abilities so that you integrate that and you go, oh, there's another part of me I just got back. And then show you how you can use that and you get to play. So that's why I'm doing this self-love and soul reading training course. It's going to be for 18 months. And it's that long because I've put a lot more care, a lot more mentoring time into this. So it's not like you're going to be, learning something every week for 18 months. There's more of a program to it, and I'll tell you all about that on the presentation on Friday. But basically, when I learned this gift and I started reading people professionally, and I was doing it, as my daily living, and I was invited all over the world. I've read some, done readings for some people I just never imagined would happen. Some things I never saw coming, people I was like, what am I doing here? This is mad. Very well known or very prestigious people. And what I learned from reading people is that basically there is that gap between the shadow self, the unrealized self, and the potential. Where we get stuck in our old patterns and then what's possible for us. And there always seems to be that gap, that big chasm of, yeah, but I don't know how to get from where I'm stuck to where I want to be. And whether that's with your health, whether you're ill and you don't know how to get to wellness, whether you've got some mental health issues where you're struggling with your self-esteem or your self-image or your identity, and you're feeling in the dark and you don't know how to get to this potential that you know you could be, that you want to be, whether it's with your work, whether it's with money, it doesn't matter what it is. There's just a gap of like, well, how do you get from that place I don't want to be to the place I do want to be? How do I get unstuck? How do I get out of these old patterns? How do I liberate myself? How do I get free? And that was a pattern I was always reading in people. And then I discovered that the very one thing that seemed to work to bridge every single gap that people had, which meant giving them a solution to pretty much any single problem that people came to me with. Again, physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, was this part where there was a little part of them, usually an inner child, that didn't feel loved. And that lack of being seen, that lack of being heard, that lack of being truly met, held, understood, and validated for who they really are. That's what was at the bottom of this problem. That was the gap of, well, I don't know. I don't know how to go from there to there. And it was all like the root cause of pretty much everybody's problem. I can't think of what I'm saying, pretty much. I can't think of one person where this didn't apply to, but I just want to say, maybe there is a case. But if you feel into yourself right now, is there a part of you where you didn't feel properly seen, properly heard, properly held, properly met, validated and acknowledged for who you are, for your value, for your light, for your beauty, for your talent, for your worthiness, for your specialness, for it could be for anything. And that part of you is the part that's waiting to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, to be loved. And when that part of you does get those needs met, they blossom. And we come back to exactly what I've been talking about for this whole video. But that unmet part is the root of the problems. Why? Because it's the part of you that doesn't feel loved. because being loved means being seen, held, heard, empathized with, connected to, being present with, like you matter, like you're important. And not having that makes you feel unloved. And unloved is like a chasm. It's like a hole. It's like a big gap where you just don't know. It's like nothing, empty. It's dark. It's lonely. There's no one there. Feels horrible. Can easily get really heavy and really negative and really painful. So when I was reading people, I kept noticing, oh, look, there's that part of them. This is what's at the bottom of this problem. And it didn't matter if that problem was a pattern that had been repeating lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. I could trace it back always to, and you can always put it down to this lifetime as well, by the way, if you don't believe in lifetimes, but you can always transform something in the memories of this lifetime as well. But it's like I would trace it back and go, there's right at the root of the issue, there's that little them that didn't feel loved, that hasn't yet been seen. And so that's how I ended up developing this method. So in one way, it was really good for me to see that part of them. That gave them a certain amount. That was like, yes, I'm lit up, I'm shining, I've been seen finally. But just me seeing them was never enough. Obviously, it's just like one person. I'm not even the right person. I'm not the mum, the dad, the God, whoever it is that each and every single one of you is waiting to be seen by. I'm not that person. I can't fill their shoes. However, there are shoes that can be filled that you can fill. Shoes that have got your name on them. They're your feet size. So that you can actually be the one to validate yourself, to see yourself, to hear yourself, to connect to yourself, to hold yourself, to deeply listen and empathize with yourself and be present with yourself and love yourself. And I learned how to develop this method so that I could like walk people into the place where they needed the love, and then they would be their own hero, their own savior. They would be the right voice with the right words at the right time in the right place, everything right, with the right touch, with the right everything, so that they could meet that unmet, unvalidated part of themselves. They could be their own hero. They could love themselves and therefore transform that deep root of the problem and therefore completely transform the issue that they were struggling with. I learned how to develop that method because I could see so precisely inside of people. I could see how it was changing their thoughts. I could see how it was changing their emotions. It's almost like I could, kind of see the words landing. I could see where their awareness was. I could see how impactful it was being and where they needed more impact, or it needed to be left a bit or right a bit. It was like that. I could literally guide people right to the spot in their subconscious that they weren't aware of, so that they could deliver that love and they could heal themselves and transform themselves. And it was so powerful that then people started asking me to teach it. And here we are today. I've been teaching that method for years. I've created it as a therapeutic modality called transformational self-love therapy. And people can learn this in the short space of 12 weeks to go and use with their clients. And you don't need to have the psychic powers that I have. You don't need to be able to see inside of people to do it. I developed the method to a certain way so that anybody can learn this method to facilitate somebody else to that place. No psychic powers needed. It just takes you straight there, and you can transform and heal things. And it's supremely powerful. And so this whole self-love aspect was actually born of me being able to do these readings. And then what's happened is that actually self-love has become so important. It's become like the biggest part of all of this in a way, to come out of it. More important than teaching people or facilitating people to develop their psychic abilities and senses, it was like, well, the self-love part actually kind of needs to happen first. And actually, ironically, using this self-love method actually is the perfect tool for cleaning up all of those parts of you where you feel unseen, unloved, unheard, and basically cleaning up those senses so that when you clean up, I'm not seen, somehow you see more clearly. Somehow when you clean up, I'm not heard, you can speak more freely. You start to be able to channel. In that cleaning up, I wasn't held the way I needed to be held in the right way, or, held in a harmful way. And then that's healed using the self-love method. Guess what? Your abilities to connect and feel energies through your hands starts to amplify. Self-love, this modality, has been the perfect tool for cleaning up people's senses, for cleaning up all parts of themselves, actually, so that they can birth their genius and birth their gifts and just start blossoming into who they actually truly are authentically. Because love does that. Love doesn't actually pretend. Love isn't just a quick ego boost. Love is that deep. Love is that present. Love doesn't abandon. Even in those pits, even in the darkest places, real true love does not abandon you ever. And it hasn't abandoned you ever. And actually, of all your superpowers, love is your greatest superpower. The love that you have inside of you, the love that you were born with, the love that you are made from is your superpower. And it wants to be seen. It wants to be heard. It wants to be met, held, felt, empathized with, touched, validated. It wants to expose itself through you. It wants to be known through your particular amazing flavor, color, expression, words, however you do it, right? Through the flavor of you. This love wants to manifest in the world. And in a way, it really actually already is. But there's a lot of resistance, and people are clamping down, and people are scared of being exposed, scared of opening up, and there's all this fight going on. And that makes for a very uncomfortable awakening. It makes for a much slower, more painful process because there's that much contraction. There's a lot of fear of letting go. There's a lot of control and clamping down, and, it's just not the best way for you to be born into your fullest potential. The best way is painless, blissful home birth, like I had with my babies. You just let the birth happen and you be in that love and you allow it to happen. So that's the kind of space that I'm offering for this training. If this sounds like your kind of thing, I know most people are going to be scared. Most people are not even listening at this point. Most people have switched off. So if you're still here listening to this, then there must be something in it for you. Not everybody is ready for this. And it's not as scary as it sounds. It's not like, oh my God, all of a sudden, like Superman, you rip open your shirt and suddenly you're this super being and then you can never hide again and everyone's going to know who you are. And it's like, wow, your light will blind everybody. It's not going to be like that. It's much more natural. It's much more organic. It's like watching the buds come out on the trees and then the first few little petals poking through the bud, and then it begins to flower, and then you get a fruit, and then it ripens, and then, wow, you've got this, out of nowhere, you've got this amazing, juicy fruit, something incredible, something delicious, something beautiful. And it's kind of much more like that. It's a process. And it actually isn't scary. It's really liberating because you get to drop a lot of the habits that you've picked up along the way, a lot of the coping mechanisms, the parts of you that aren't you. And you get to develop your natural gifts. Now, what you do with that is up to you. I can give you some guidance and I can give you some support, but what you do with that is up to you. So if this sounds interesting, shoot me a little message down below. I'll send you the link. You can join me on Friday. If you happen to be watching this after the video, after Friday, send me an email anyway. Send me an email to my website. Go to taraloveperry.com. There's some links below. And just look me up. And because I've been thinking, okay, how many more times am I going to run this training? I haven't run it for a few years. I'm doing it again because it's one of my most favorite things to do. I just love spending time with the kind of people that want to open up and just be authentic and be themselves and go on this journey of discovery. So that's a lot of joy for me. That's why I'm doing it. I don't know if I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to be teaching the Transformational Self-Love Therapy 12-week practitioner training. So maybe you're just wanting one stage. Maybe the whole package is too much for you right now, and you just want to learn how to facilitate somebody using that self-love method. You're completely welcome. Hop on. You don't have to do all of the parts of the training. You can just do one. It's up to you. But come, hop on with me and learn. And I just want to thank you for staying with me, for listening to this video, for listening to my message. And I'm just sending you so much love. And have a wonderful rest of the day. I'll see you soon.